Listen, in my 20-plus years managing pharma plants, overseeing active pharmaceutical ingredient manufacturing, and running quality operations, I've read literally countless FDA warning letters. Usually, they follow a pretty predictable pattern. But an inspection that went down in October 2025 at a facility in Michigan exposed something entirely new and, frankly, completely alarming. Today, we're going to do a full autopsy on a historic FDA inspection that exposed a fatal misunderstanding of good manufacturing practices, or GMP. We're looking at exactly what happens when a fundamental lack of quality oversight collides with the inappropriate use of artificial intelligence. Look, if you work in a plant right now, whether you're a lab tech, an engineer, or a quality manager, this is an explainer you absolutely cannot afford to ignore.
So here's how we're going to break this down today. First, we'll look at a classic FDA warning. Second, the fatal AI mistake. Third, why documents aren't compliance. Fourth, 5 rules for safe AI. And finally, the ultimate responsibility. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1. Section 1, a classic FDA warning and the baseline failures at Purolea Cosmetics Lab.
Okay, so between October 28th and 30th, 2025, the FDA inspected the Purolea Cosmetics Lab facility up in Michigan. Now, because their products made claims about treating conditions like shingles, they automatically crossed over into highly regulated drug territory. That raises the bar for compliance to the absolute highest level. And yet, when the inspectors actually walked the floor, what they found were just foundational, systemic failures. It really paints a picture of a fundamentally weak quality unit. We're talking unsanitary factory conditions, insects, dirt, leaves, and clutter all over the place. They even had a dock door just left wide open, exposing the manufacturing area directly to the outside environment. But the physical mess, that was just the surface. The FDA found a severe lack of microbiological testing before batches were released. In non-sterile products, a batch might look totally fine to the naked eye, but still be swarming with objectionable microorganisms. Without testing, you literally have zero scientific evidence that the lot is safe. Furthermore, they were failing to test incoming components for identity and purity. Instead, they were just blindly trusting unverified supplier certificates of analysis, or COAs. In our industry, a piece of paper from a supplier absolutely does not replace your own responsibility. If a component is critical, you've got to have a real control strategy. Now, up to this point, this sounds like a harsh, but honestly pretty traditional warning letter. But let's see how this snowballs into something much, much worse. Section 2, the fatal AI mistake, delegating the undelegable.
Here is where things go completely off the rails and elevate this from a standard warning letter to a landmark regulatory case. There's a crazy plot twist here. The FDA noted that the company used AI agents to create their product specifications, their standard operating procedures, and their master production records, and they did it completely without human verification. No way around it. The sheer scope of this delegation is staggering. Look, an AI can write text quickly, for sure, but it cannot, legally or practically, assume the GMP responsibilities of a pharmaceutical manufacturer. A master production record isn't just some pretty template you download, it's the exact recipe and strict control strategy for manufacturing a drug safely. If a piece of software generates a specification that no technical expert ever bothers to review, that specification could be dangerously wrong. If it writes a procedure that nobody actually compares against the physical equipment on your shop floor, well, that procedure is just pure fiction.
And this brings us to a quote that I swear should be printed out and pasted on the wall of every single quality department in the world. When the FDA investigators pointed out that the company completely failed to perform mandatory process validation before shipping their products, the company's excuse was literally this: we didn't know it was a legal requirement because the AI agent never told us. I mean, wow. It's actually shocking. It exposes the absolute absurdity of delegating your regulatory knowledge to software. You cannot look an FDA inspector in the eye and say, hey, I didn't do it because the AI didn't warn me. You simply cannot release a product to the market hoping a probabilistic software model just happened to remember all your applicable legal requirements.
Section 3. Documents are not compliance.
the illusion versus the reality.
So that ridiculous excuse leads us directly to the core operational lesson of this whole case study. It exposes a highly dangerous misconception of what GMP documentation actually represents. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding true good manufacturing practice. GMP means manufacturing in a controlled, reproducible way with hard scientific evidence that every single batch meets identity, strength, quality, purity, and safety standards. For any new engineers or lab technicians watching this explainer right now, you have to understand that a document is not just some decoration you pull out to show an auditor. A procedure isn't just nice-sounding text saved in a shared folder. A real GMP document is a reflection of a controlled, physical process that is actually happening out there on the floor. It has to connect to real equipment, real materials, real human training, and real product release.
What the technology created in this plant was a very dangerous illusion. Because AI can generate massive volumes of text at incredible speed, it can create this fake illusion of compliance. You sit there and think, hey, I have 100 standard operating procedures, so I must be compliant. But the reality? The reality is that you are only compliant when those documents are correct, applicable, human-approved, and perfectly match your actual factory operations. If your fancy auto-generated generic checklist doesn't match the specific valves and pressure limits of your actual mixing tank, you are not compliant. The tool doesn't change the fundamental rule of pharma. Your real process must exactly match what you say you do on paper.
Section 4. 5 Rules for Safe AI. How to integrate technology without breaking GMP.
Look, the reality is that these new technologies are going to enter our plants. The question isn't really whether the industry will use them, but how we're going to use them as a tool without completely violating strict regulations. Based on the fallout from this warning letter, here is your practical framework. There are 5 mandatory steps you've got to follow. Number 1, qualified human review. Somebody from quality, production, or regulatory affairs absolutely must critically review the content. Number 2, traceability. You need to know exactly what tool was used, what it was used for, who reviewed it, and who approved it. Number 3, source verification. Software can easily invent requirements or just totally omit critical safety steps. You have to verify outputs against official guidelines. Number 4, real process alignment. Like we said, a generic procedure is totally useless if it doesn't accurately describe your specific plant equipment and controls. And number 5, clear quality responsibility. The final decision can never, ever be, well, the software said so. The final decision has to rest with an authorized, competent human being within a functioning quality system. Technology can be a really fast assistant, but it can never be your quality manager.
Section 5. The ultimate human responsibility and the real price of failure.
To wrap up our analysis, we really need to look at the heavy regulatory and economic consequences of treating a digital tool as a substitute for human oversight. Just look at the devastating fallout for this facility. Because of these massive systemic failures, the FDA noted that the company had to cease their manufacturing operations entirely. The business impact of that? Total loss of market presence and zero revenue. And if they ever want to resume operations, the FDA recommended they hire a qualified external consultant to conduct a mandatory, comprehensive audit of all 6 of their GMP systems. The consulting and remediation costs for something like that are just astronomical. Plus, an uncorrected warning letter carries severe legal risks. We're talking seizure of products, federal injunctions, or blocked export certificates. Honestly, the reputational damage alone from a mess like this can sink a company overnight.
Ultimately, when a drug reaches a vulnerable patient, the FDA doesn't care if the procedure was written by a human, a pricey consultant, or a machine. What matters is whether that product was manufactured under strict, verifiable control. In a highly regulated industry like ours, technology simply does not eliminate human responsibility. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Will this technology enter your plant as a carefully controlled tool or as a dangerous false sense of compliance? The answer to that question could literally be the difference between operational excellence and a catastrophic warning letter.
If you're interested in understanding how the pharmaceutical industry truly works from the inside, subscribe to the Secretos de Fábrica Top channel. Here, we're building explainer by explainer, a real MBA of the pharmaceutical industry, based on actual factory experience, not textbooks.